She appeared out of the storm like a ghost, a little girl with trembling hands and tear-filled eyes, whispering words that froze the heart of a man who thought he had nothing left to lose. He'll kill Mommy. In that single moment, the lonely CEO's world shifted forever. This wasn't just a chance encounter. It was the beginning of a bond that would test his courage, reopen the wounds of his past, and ultimately show him what it truly means to save a life, and to be saved in return. If your heart believes in stories that reveal the strength of love, the resilience of hope, and the power of second chances, then stay with us. Because here, every echo hides a truth waiting to be heard. Subscribe now to Hidden Echo Stories, where every story is a light in the dark. The rain came down in relentless sheets, painting the city in streaks of silver and shadow. Seattle at night had always carried a certain beauty, a kind of melancholy glow that reflected off glass towers and slick black asphalt. But for Caleb Whitman, the skyline was nothing more than a backdrop to another night that felt unbearably empty. His car hummed quietly as it cut through the storm, a sleek machine meant to symbolize success. Yet inside it was little more than a metal cocoon for his solitude. The bow tie around his neck hung loose, a defeated piece of silk against his crisp shirt. He had smiled at too many strangers that evening, exchanged handshakes with people whose names he could not remember, and listened to speeches that fell flat against the hollow space inside him. Caleb had built a life of grandeur, yet it left him with nothing but silence. His penthouse, perched high above the city, was stocked with the best food, decorated with expensive art, and yet felt colder than the rain beating on the windows. The refrigerator was full of untouched meals. The bed, wrapped in sheets that cost more than most families earned in a month, never held warmth. And the laughter he occasionally heard at galas or board meetings always reminded him of how long it had been since he had heard his own. He pressed his fingers against the steering wheel as he waited at a red light, staring blankly at the traffic signal blurred by the storm. His mind wandered to memories he rarely allowed himself to visit.
Mommy was taken
a childhood
to the
moment
house
in a
by the
crowded
river.
carnival, a sister's hand slipping out of his own, the panic that followed, the hours of searching until she was found again. The terror had never really left him, though he had buried it beneath years of ambition and steel-hearted resolve. The light flicked green. He moved forward, but something caught his eye.
Here's your warm milk, my dear.
A small figure, nearly invisible through the sheets of rain, stood in the median. He blinked once, thinking exhaustion had conjured the vision. But then the figure moved. A child. Caleb's heart hammered as his headlights revealed more. A girl no older than 7 or 8, barefoot and soaked to the bone, her knees scraped and bleeding, her hair plastered to her pale face. She clutched a small pink backpack in one hand, the other arm wrapped tightly around a white bundle that sagged from exhaustion. Her wide blue eyes stared directly into the beam of his headlights, wild with terror. He slammed on the brakes, tires screeching against the slick pavement. The car shuddered to a halt just feet away from her. Before he could gather his thoughts, the child stumbled toward him, her small fists hammering on the glass, her lips moving desperately. He lowered the window just enough to hear her voice. "Please, sir, he will kill Mommy." The words were fragmented, shivering with sobs, but they pierced through Caleb with a force greater than any business failure or financial loss ever could. For a moment he sat frozen, the storm roaring around him. Then instinct took over. He shoved the car into park, threw open the passenger door, and rushed into the rain.
It smells like old rain.
The child recoiled at first, trembling, eyes darting as if expecting the night itself to swallow her. Caleb crouched low, his palms open. "You are safe now," he told her, his voice hoarse. "I promise." For a heartbeat, she did not move. Then she crumpled forward, letting out a cry that cut him to the core. He gathered her into his arms, shocked by how light she was, how cold. She clung to him, shaking violently, the backpack still pressed against her chest as if it held the last piece of her world. Caleb carried her to the car and set her gently into the passenger seat, wrapping his own jacket around her tiny body. She whispered her name through chattering teeth, Ava Monroe. He cranked the seat heater and pressed a cup of warmth
You are
into her
brave.
hands after a quick
We
stop
will
at a
find
pharmacy.
your mom.
She held the hot chocolate like it was fragile, sipping in tiny gulps, her wide eyes never leaving his face. She flinched at the sight of his phone lighting up, panic flooding her gaze.
Please help us.
The terror was unmistakable. Someone out there still held her in chains of fear. Caleb silenced the phone, his own pulse racing. He had dealt with hostile takeovers and corporate betrayals, but nothing had prepared him for the raw desperation in Ava's eyes. She spoke of her mother, hurt and taken to a house by the river. She begged him not to let the man find her. The man, the one who had left bruises on her knees and terror in her voice. As Caleb drove through the storm, his thoughts spiraled. He had the wealth to build empires, to silence competitors, to shape cities in steel and glass. But could he protect this one small life sitting beside him? Could he shield her from a darkness that had already scarred her more
Ava
deeply
is safe.
than any child should endure? He pulled into the underground garage of his penthouse and carried Ava
Come
upstairs.
on, we're almost there.
She clung to him with the quiet
can't.
intensity of someone who knew safety was temporary, fleeting. Inside, the vast living room seemed colder than ever,
My
its glass
darling.
walls exposing them to a city that had suddenly become hostile. Caleb laid her on the sofa,
It is going to
smoothing
be
the
all
blanket
right,
over
my
her
love.
shivering body. She drifted into a restless sleep, whispering about the house by the river, about a monster with a jagged scar. Caleb sat on the marble floor, rain dripping from his hair, his chest tight. He understood then that his life, once defined by boardrooms and numbers, had shifted irreversibly. The emptiness he had long accepted as safe now felt like a prison. For the first time in years, he was no longer alone. For the first time, he had something to lose. The night inside the penthouse was silent except for the storm pressing against the glass walls. Ava sat curled on the sofa, wrapped in Caleb's jacket, her small hands gripping the pink backpack as though it were a lifeline. Every now and then her
Dalton's
eyes
condition
flicked
is
toward the door,
improving after the tragic
watching it
accident.
with the dread of someone who expected it to burst open at any second. Caleb hovered close,
We are
his
coming
own
for
shirt
you.
damp, his heart still racing from the way she had appeared in the storm. He had
Oh,
never felt
I'm
so
so
utterly
sorry.
unprepared in his life. When Grace Patel
Oh,
arrived,
no.
the quiet was broken. She was fierce even when weary, her heels clicking sharply against
Security
the marble
protocol
floor,
initiated.
her eyes scanning the scene with quick judgment. Caleb braced himself for her criticism, but
I should have
instead
been
she
stronger.
knelt by Ava, her voice gentler than he had ever heard it.
It will be okay,
She checked
Samantha.
the child's forehead with
You
the
are
back
strong.
of her hand, asked her softly if she was hungry, and coaxed her into sipping warm milk. Grace was always efficient, always strong, but that night she became something more. She became the anchor Caleb needed. Ava responded in small ways. She accepted crackers, drew a picture with colored pencils Grace had found, and when she finally slid the paper across to Caleb, his chest tightened.
We need
The
to
drawing
move
was
now.
crude but
Do
powerful.
not hesitate.
A stick figure girl, a woman with long hair, and a looming man with a mouth slashed into a jagged line. The fear in those
You two stay
frantic
here
pencil
where it's
strokes
safe.
made Caleb's stomach twist. He had spent his life ignoring problems he could not solve, delegating them away, but now he could not look away. The picture demanded something of him. Grace leaned over his shoulder, her eyes narrowing. "This is not just a lost child," she whispered. "Something terrible happened." She worked quickly, searching records and databases. Within the hour, she found
Get your
Samantha
hands off
Monroe,
me!
Ava's mother, reported missing days ago. A history of domestic violence complaints. A name, Rick Dalton, a man with a scar that matched the one Ava had drawn.
You will regret this.
The revelation sent a jolt through Caleb. He stared at Ava, who clutched her backpack tighter, refusing to let anyone open it. Her eyes darted to the shadows, to the windows, as if expecting the man to emerge from the storm itself. Caleb silenced his phone again, ignoring the demands of board members and partners. None of it mattered anymore. As dawn crept through the city,
want to add
Ava
the
pointed
blueberries?
shakily at a
Yes,
photograph
please.
Grace had pulled up on her laptop. A house near the
Just
river,
about done with the
abandoned and
first coat.
sagging into decay. Her
Looks
small
pretty good.
voice whispered, "That one." Caleb's blood ran cold. He knew he
Ava.
should call the authorities, but something in Ava's desperate plea the night before kept his hand still.
Wow.
She did not trust the police, not after whatever horrors she had endured. and for reasons he could not explain, Caleb felt bound to honor that trust. They drove together through the storm, the city falling away into a landscape of rusted warehouses and overgrown lots. Ava sat silently in the back seat, her backpack pressed to her chest, her wide eyes reflecting the rain. Grace rode in the passenger seat, her jaw tight, her determination as sharp as steel. Caleb felt alive in a way he had not in years, a nervous energy that surged with every mile they closed toward the river. The house came into view, its porch sagging, windows broken, paint peeling in gray strips. A sneaker lay abandoned in the weeds.
Yes,
Caleb
we do.
gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles ached. Ava shrank against the door, whispering, "It smells like old rain." Her words were simple, but the fear behind them made his throat
Pass
tight.
me the bread, please.
Inside the house, the air was thick
pasta
with
is
mildew and
delicious.
despair. Caleb stepped
Can I have another
carefully, his
cookie?
flashlight sweeping over overturned furniture and blood-stained rags. Every detail told the story of violence, of lives torn apart and abandoned. A pink shoe lay near the stairs, matching the one outside. In the living room, he found a torn photograph.
I am so
Samantha
proud
with
of you.
Ava,
You're going to do
smiling
great.
faintly, a man looming
Thank you.
behind
I
them.
really needed that.
His face had been slashed through with a knife. The scar was there, unmistakable. Upstairs, he found a closet with scratches on the inside of the door. Tucked behind old clothes was another drawing, two stick figures in
Yeah,
a
it looks
box
really
labeled
does.
safe.
Yeah, it does.
Caleb's chest constricted as he realized Ava had once hidden there, waiting for help that never came. He gathered what he could, his determination hardening with every step. On the way out, he spotted fresh tire tracks leading away from the porch toward the woods. Someone had left in a hurry, and it had not been long. His pulse thundered in his ears as he returned to the car. Ava's eyes searched his face desperately. He knelt beside her, pressing the torn photograph into her hands. "You were so brave," he said, his voice breaking. "We will find your mom, I promise." Back at the penthouse, Ava fell asleep in Grace's arms, still clutching the backpack. Caleb could not rest. He replayed the words scrawled on the wall upstairs, words that were both plea and command. "If you find this, please help us." He had found them. He could not walk away. Grace uncovered more evidence. Another house farther upriver, a roof described by Ava as loud, a bill paid in cash traced back to Rick Dalton. Caleb felt time slipping through his fingers. He told Grace to keep Ava safe, then left for the second house, his car
This
trailed
is my
quietly by a
family.
pair of private security vehicles. He told himself he was no hero, but as the rain lashed against his windshield, he knew he had no choice but to try. The second house loomed under a corrugated roof that rattled with each gust of wind. Shadows clawed at the siding as Caleb forced himself through the door. Inside, the stench of mildew and fear was suffocating. He
You
moved
are
from
doing
room to room
great.
until he heard it. A faint
Thanks.
whimper,
I think it's almost
a
done.
woman's voice
So
begging for
happy
mercy.
we made it.
He found Samantha Monroe bound on the
Me
floor,
too.
her face
It looks like
bruised,
fun.
her wrists raw from restraints.
Cheers,
At first
everyone.
she fought him,
To
believing he was
family
the monster
and
who had tormented her. But when he spoke Ava's name, her defenses shattered. Tears streamed down her face as he freed her hands and wrapped her in his coat. "You are not alone anymore," Caleb told her, his voice trembling but certain. "Ava is waiting for you." Samantha clung to him, barely able to stand.
Us.
As he helped her
Grateful.
outside, she whispered in a voice hoarse with fear, "He said he would never let us go." Caleb's grip tightened. "He touched you for the last time. He will never hurt either of you again." The drive back blurred into moments of exhaustion and raw relief. When Samantha stepped into the penthouse and Ava ran into her arms, the embrace broke Caleb's composure. He watched as mother and daughter clung to each other, their sobs filling the once empty space with something real, something human. Grace stood beside them, silent
This is
tears on her
us.
cheeks. And Caleb
my
knew with clarity he had not
goodness.
felt
This
in
is so
years.
good,
His
Ava.
life would never be the same. The days that followed were both fragile and heavy, like glass balanced on the edge of a table. Inside Caleb's
And
penthouse,
that's when I
the
realized
rhythm of life
the
shifted
cat
into something
wasn't just
unfamiliar
walking.
but
It was
strangely comforting.
dancing.
Samantha and Ava no longer lived in fear of the storm outside, but the shadows of their past lingered in every glance, every trembling hand. Ava clung to her backpack less often now, though she still kept it close when she slept. Samantha, her wrists wrapped in clean bandages, moved quietly through the space. Her steps tentative as though she was afraid the floor might give way beneath her. Grace held everything together with her steady presence, bringing food, warmth, and a calm that soothed the edges of their terror. For Caleb, the change was overwhelming. He watched as his once sterile penthouse transformed into something human. Crumbs on the marble, toys scattered across the floor, the smell of cinnamon drifting from the kitchen. These were things he had never allowed before, yet they made the space feel more like a home than it ever had. Each sound of Ava's laughter struck him like a revelation. Each weary but grateful smile from Samantha reminded him that he had stepped into a role he had never expected. Protector, anchor,
Here you go,
family.
Ava. Oh, thank you, Samantha.
The peace never lasts long when danger is still at the door. News arrived that Rick Dalton's car had been found burned, abandoned on a side street
Are you
not
ready
far
for
from
some
the river
stories,
house.
my dears?
Then came the phone call.
I'm
Grace
so glad
answered,
we got to do
her
this
face
today.
paling at the distorted voice
Me
promising
too.
that
This
they
is
could not hide
perfect.
forever. The words crawled into every
This is
corner
for
of the
you,
penthouse,
Ava.
poisoning
Oh,
the fragile
Grace,
calm
it's
they had begun to
beautiful.
build. Samantha's hand shook so badly she nearly dropped the cup she was holding. Ava buried her face in her mother's chest, whispering prayers Caleb could not hear. Caleb acted without hesitation. He locked down the building, called in his private security, and stationed guards at every entrance. But even with all the measures, the penthouse felt vulnerable, like glass waiting to shatter. Samantha confessed in a trembling voice that she had always known Rick would find her again. That night, as Ava drifted into restless sleep, Samantha sat on the edge of the bed, tears streaking her face. "I should have been stronger," she whispered. "I should have been able to keep her safe." Caleb knelt in front of her, his hands firm on her shoulders. "You were strong," he told her fiercely. "You survived and you protected her long enough for me to find you. None of this is your fault, and now you are not alone." The reassurance was fragile, but it held for a moment, until the alarm shrieked in the dead of night. The sound ripped through the penthouse like a blade. The security feed flickered, showing a shadowed figure moving with ruthless precision. He disabled cameras, his hood dripping rain, his pipe smashing metal and glass as he advanced. Rick Dalton had come. Caleb's pulse thundered in his ears as he shouted orders into his phone. Grace rushed to Samantha and Ava, locking them in the suite, her body shielded around theirs. Caleb braced himself against the door as pounding fists shook it in its frame. "You will not touch them," he
Here
growled
is our
through
new
the wood.
family.
"It is over." The struggle in the hall was a blur of shouts, boots, and the crash of metal. Police arrived in a storm of commands and flashing lights. At last, Dalton was dragged down, his face twisted with fury, his voice spewing threats that echoed down
Can you
the
hand me the
corridor.
sprinkles now?
"She is
Yes,
mine.
I can.
You cannot keep her from me. This is not over." But the power was gone from his words. His body sagged in defeat as the officers hauled him away. Inside the suite, Samantha collapsed, sobbing into her hands. Ava pressed her tiny hand
That
against
reminds me of the
Caleb's, her
time.
eyes wide with relief. For the first time, the nightmare was truly broken.
Oh my goodness.
In the days after Dalton's arrest, the air inside the penthouse began to change. Samantha and Ava stayed close to each other, rebuilding their bond with quiet tenderness. Ava's laughter returned in bursts, her drawings filling the walls with suns, flowers, and families holding hands. She painted her world back into color. Samantha found her strength again,
We love you,
standing
Samantha.
taller, her eyes
My
slowly
sweet,
clearing of the haunted
sweet
look
girl.
that had followed her for years.
Thanks, Mom and Dad.
With Grace's encouragement, she began speaking to counselors
Isn't this amazing?
and even applied for a position at a
It's so
nonprofit
beautiful.
dedicated to survivors of abuse. For Caleb, the transformation was profound. He had spent years building walls of glass and stone around himself, keeping the world at bay. Now those walls had been breached not by business rivals or hostile markets, but by a frightened child and her wounded mother. And in their presence, he discovered something he had thought forever lost: the ability to feel alive, to care, to belong. The first time Samantha cooked a meal in his kitchen, he found himself smiling in a way he could not remember. The night Ava painted her name on the wall of her new room, his chest tightened with pride. The morning he found a drawing of 3 figures under a bright yellow sun taped to his mirror. He realized that
that's
the
beautiful.
loneliness he had once clung to as safety had finally been replaced by something greater. And when Samantha, her voice still quiet but steady, looked at him one evening
I
and
love
whispered,
you, Caleb.
"You are the first person who ever believed
I love
me."
you too, Samantha.
Caleb felt something inside him heal. For years he had lived as if the world owed him nothing but money and power. But now he understood that what he had been missing was not victory, not accolades, but connection. A family, not chosen by blood, but by trust, by survival, by love. As spring returned to Seattle, the penthouse no longer felt like a fortress. It became a home. And for the first time in his life, Caleb Whitman knew he was exactly where he belonged. There are moments in life when the world changes in an instant. A rain-soaked street, a frightened child's cry, a promise whispered in the dark. For Caleb, what began as a lonely drive home became a journey that redefined his entire existence. He had lived behind walls of wealth and silence, convincing himself that solitude was safer than disappointment. But in the trembling hands of a little girl and the broken voice of a desperate mother, he discovered a truth far greater than any empire he had ever built. Love is not found in grand gestures or glittering success. It is discovered in the fragile spaces between fear and hope, in the courage it takes to believe someone's story, and in the choice to stand firm when it would be easier to look away. Caleb did not just rescue Ava and Samantha.
Little Bear
They
found a
rescued him as
big,
well.
comfy bed.
They tore open the armor he had carried for years and filled the emptiness inside with meaning. Ava's laughter now echoed through rooms once suffocated by silence. Samantha's quiet resilience turned the cold penthouse into a sanctuary of healing. Grace's loyalty wove it all together, proving that family is not always written in blood, but in the bonds forged through trust and survival. Together, they created a story not of tragedy, but of renewal.
I've got
This
it.
tale is not only theirs. It belongs to every soul who has ever felt unseen, unheard, or unloved. It belongs to those who have stood at the edge of despair,
You are a
wondering
brave
if light
girl,
could ever
Ava.
break through. It is a reminder that kindness still has the power to heal, that courage can rewrite destinies, and that even the loneliest heart can become a home. And now,
Well, that was a day
this
to
story
remember.
reaches you.
Indeed it
Perhaps
was,
it
dear.
stirs a memory you
Can we
carry
do it again
quietly,
tomorrow?
or awakens a hope you thought long forgotten. Perhaps it reminds you that no matter how dark the night, love has a way of finding us, even when we least expect it. Here at Hidden Echo Stories, we believe in sharing these echoes of humanity, the whispers of strength, the cries for help, the miracles of second chances. Because in telling them, we keep alive the truth that none of us are truly alone. If this story touched your heart, if it
Happy to
reminded
spend
you
some
of the
time with
power
all
of
of you.
compassion and the beauty of healing, then we invite you to join us. Subscribe to Hidden Echo Stories and be part of a community where every tale is a light in the dark, waiting to guide someone home. Because sometimes, all it takes is believing someone's story and refusing to let go.